Thanks for tuning in. I'm Sebastian from Messkom based in Mauen, Germany. From now on, we'll keep you posted regularly on what's happening in Wi-Fi, fiber optics, and network measurement technology. Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, there's something here for you. Today we're kicking off with a topic most people write off as pure politics, but one that can pull the plug on you overnight: digital sovereignty. Let's dive right in. And to keep this from staying abstract, let me start with something that happened to me. One weekend, I was working on a project using a digital tool that at the time was simply the best there was. In the middle of the work, it was suddenly gone. Not crashed, not overloaded. Shut down. Overnight because of a decision made somewhere else entirely, in another country. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today, because at its core, digital sovereignty is a very practical question. How quickly can someone else pull the plug on you? And for most companies, the answer is more uncomfortable than they'd like to think. Let me quickly sort out what digital sovereignty actually means. Put simply, it means deciding for yourself which technology you work with, where your data lives, and who you depend on when it really matters. That plays out on three levels, and they're almost always connected. The first is data. Where is it stored, and which laws actually apply there? The second is software and AI, programs, licenses, and models that can be changed, made more expensive, or switched off from a distance. And the third is hardware and infrastructure, from the operating system to the network gear, down to the individual measurement device. And here's the practical problem behind all of it: dependency. A large part of the European economy runs on the cloud of three US corporations: Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. Estimates put somewhere between roughly 70 and over 90% of Europe's cloud infrastructure in their hands. On top of that comes a legal lever many people aren't aware of. The US Cloud Act requires American providers to give US authorities access to stored data, even when the servers sit in Frankfurt or Amsterdam. So the popular argument, "But my servers are in Europe," doesn't carry as far as you'd think. You might be thinking, fine, but that's all theory. It isn't. There are two cases that made it very concrete. The first plays out in The Hague. In the spring of 2025, Microsoft blocked the email account of Karim Khan, the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. It followed US sanctions against the court. Microsoft is an American company, so it had little choice but to follow its own government's order. Khan then switched to a Swiss email service, and the court later moved parts of its software to a European solution. Picture that: one of the most respected institutions in the world locked out of its own inbox with the stroke of a pen from another country. The second case is more recent. On June 12, 2026, the US government used export controls to bar the provider Anthropic from delivering its flagship models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, to customers outside the United States. Overnight, they had to be shut down worldwide. A tool people relied on all over the world went silent from one day to the next. The lesson from both cases is the same, and it's an uncomfortable one. Whoever provides the tool holds the leverage. And that leverage isn't in your hands. It doesn't take a cyber attack or a bankruptcy. A political decision is enough. Now you could say, tough one-off cases, far from my daily work. But that's shifting right now, from a strategic consideration into an obligation. The NIS2 directive requires more and more companies to know and secure their digital supply chain. Anyone who runs critical infrastructure or who is certified to ISO 27001 has to assess supplier and availability risks systematically. And a dependency that a foreign state can cut off by law is exactly that kind of risk. It's no longer enough to know that a service is running. You have to know who could switch it off if it came to that. That turns digital sovereignty from an ideal into a hard procurement criterion. The question in purchasing is no longer just what does it cost, but also how dependent does it make me? And now I come to the point that matters most to me because almost everyone overlooks it. When people talk about digital sovereignty, most think of email, of office software, of cloud storage. They miss the crucial blind spot. Measurement and network technology is caught in exactly the same trap. Modern measurement devices have long been small computers. Behind the display sits software, licensing models, firmware updates, and increasingly a cloud connection for analysis, for reporting, for working together as a team. And this is exactly where the most sensitive data of all is created. Think of a professional Wi-Fi survey, the measurement of a fiber optic network, a network analysis. What comes out of it are network maps, weak points, the complete topology of an infrastructure. Anyone running critical networks is documenting their most vulnerable spots with precisely this technology. And so the same questions apply as for any other IT. Do your measurement data and network maps sit on a server whose operator is subject to foreign law? Does your measurement device work even without a constant cloud connection? Or does it stop the moment the license server is unreachable? And how secure are support, spare parts, and updates if trade routes or export rules change overnight? Anyone who plans, measures, and runs networks wants to be able to count on those tools staying available. A single source that can be switched off from the outside is just as much a risk here as cloud storage in the data center. Now, the obvious reaction is, then I'll just buy European only. And here I have to slow you down, because that would just be the next one-sided move. There's a distinction that almost always gets lost in this whole debate, and I find it crucial. Not every piece of US software makes you equally dependent. What really matters is the licensing model. Let me explain the difference with an example from our own portfolio. Software that runs completely offline and is based on a one-time purchase license stays usable even if there's a sales or export ban. Take Ossium with analysis software like MetaGeek. Bought once, it keeps working, no matter what happens politically. No one can shut it off remotely. It's a different story when software that's actually local requires an annual online activation. If the license expires and the provider can no longer issue a renewal because of an export ban, then the tool stops, even though it's been installed on your computer all along. So the rule of thumb I want to give you is simple. If software comes from the US, look at the licensing model. An offline-capable perpetual license is your safeguard that, in the worst case, you can simply keep working with the software you already have. And that brings me to what we at Messkom stand for. Our answer is not buy only European from now on. Our answer is freedom of choice. Deciding deliberately where your technology comes from and how much independence fits your strategy. That's why our portfolio deliberately comes from three worlds. From Europe, for short distances and a high degree of independence. There are manufacturers like Hamina from Finland for Wi-Fi planning, Allegro Packets from Germany for network analysis, or Metrol from Slovenia for electrical safety testing. From the US for established global market leaders like Ekahau, Viavi, or Netali, where they're simply the best tool for the job. And from Asia for the cutting edge of splicing technology such as Fujikura and Sumitomo from Japan, and our technology partner, UCL Swift from South Korea. That way we cover the full range and make independence your deliberate choice, not a matter of luck. And if the best solution does turn out to come from the US, then at least you know exactly what you're getting into. To me, that's the real difference. If you take just one thing away from this episode, let it be this. The best thing you can do for your digital independence costs nothing at first. It's keeping it in mind during planning. Whoever factors in dependencies early, instead of unwinding them expensively later, saves money, time, and nerves. The loud wake-up calls were the Hague, and those AI models switched off overnight. But the quiet moment where it really counts for your company, that's your next procurement decision. And if you'd like an opinion from someone who advises across manufacturers, and honestly, even when the best tool doesn't come from Europe, you'll find us at messkom.de or just give us a call. Thanks for listening. And remember, independence doesn't start in a crisis. It starts with the next decision you're going to make anyway.